What's going on, Facebook and YouTube Live? Thanks for joining this episode of On Another Line Live, whether you're joining in out there on Facebook or could be out there on YouTube. Either one of those. I appreciate you guys joining in with us tonight. We have a really special guest on the show this evening. We're going to have resident bass talker Ronnie Moore from Bassmaster on the show here in just a few minutes. Ronnie is on his way back from doing some good with his family and, going to be a few minutes late, which is all good. But we're going to get the intro out of the way. And then, again, here soon, we're going to be joined by Ronnie Moore from Bassmaster. It's going to be a great show. You don't want to miss it. So stick around. After this short intro, we'll get into it. Again, guys, welcome to another episode of On Another Line Live. Tonight, we are joined by none other than Ronnie Moore from Bassmaster. You guys are going to want to stick around for this episode. We're talking a lot of bass fishing. We're going to talk about a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that you guys don't get to see from the Bassmaster Live stuff, as well as some fishing stuff. So, without further ado, let's bring on Ronnie. Hey, Ronnie, what's up, buddy?
What's going on, Tyler? How are you?
I can't complain, man. Sorry to rush you from your to-dos there.
Not at all. I am just making a post right now to tell people to come over because we're live, and I've been busy, so I didn't do it ahead of time. But how are you, man? I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, man, I'm doing fine. I appreciate you spending the evening with us here. Again, won't keep you any longer than you want. Anytime you want to dip out, you're more than welcome to do so. But anyway, guys, this is Ronnie Moore from Bassmaster. Just give you an opportunity. I'm sure everybody knows who you are, but if they don't, give you an opportunity to tell people who you are.
You'd be amazed at how many people don't know me, and so that always keeps me humble because it puts it in perspective that I'm this tiny, probably even smaller than that of a speck in the industry of professional bass fishing. But I'm Ronnie Moore. Obviously, he already acknowledged that, and I'm a part of the Bassmaster Live crew, so I get to get paid daily to watch people fish, and I get to tell you guys what they're doing and break it down, and it's a complete honor that this is my profession. I talk to my wife, Sarah, all the time about it, that if we can pay our bills with her working at a nonprofit ministry, a part of our church, and with me talking about bass fishing for a living, that's the American dream. I don't know what else we could ask for in life, paying our bills, talking about bass fishing. So,
yeah, no, I think that's I think it's a lot of people not only watch this show, but in the bass fishing industry, whether that be talking about bass fishing or actually getting out there and leaning on them. I think that's the end all goal that we have, to be able to pay our bills here and talk about fishing and fish, which is pretty amazing. So I think in order to be where you're at now, obviously there's a lot of rungs of the ladder that you have to climb, but you don't get into this industry by not liking to fish. So I'm sure you've been fishing since a kid, correct?
Exactly. I grew up fishing with my dad. I mean, I've played so many different sports growing up, and I just love the competitive nature of there's a score at the end of the game, and I got to have the best score if I want to win. That's just in my blood. And so I grew up bass fishing with my dad. Probably around 10, 11 years old was really when I started to get into it heavily with him. And about 13, 14 years old was when it really started to click that I enjoyed it. And then obviously I realized that my high school basketball career was going to be where it ended. I wasn't going to be a college basketball player. I wasn't going to go to the NBA, but I love sports. And so fishing gave me an outlet that it's a team sport at times, but there's an individual goal that no matter, like, you know this, if you fish a team tournament and your buddy catches all 28 pounds that you guys weigh in, it looks really good holding them up. But deep down, you want to figure out on your own how you can also contribute or catch that. So there's always that motivation and that driving factor, even when you're doing well as a team on that individual portion. So I always carried that into college fishing, that I wanted to do the best that I could do. And I just needed to be courteous to a teammate. We needed to work together. And so we got to kind of combine that throughout my time at East Carolina, and I really loved it. But that's really where I got my introduction to the sport, was with my dad in high school. We fished Fishers of Men tournament trails. We fished the big boys, where it's two, 40-year-old hammers from the region. And we got our butt kicked a bunch. And then we fished the father-son or the child-adult league, a part of Fishers of Men. And we competed a lot better there, and we came close to winning some really big stuff there. And what I really enjoyed was being that young adolescent teenager at all of these tournaments with these adults. I would be one of the only kids that was fishing not the father son or the child adult one, but the two grown adult tournament league. Me and my dad would do that. And so it was very cool being the youngest one there, and really just that competitive drive. Not being able to win those events really drove me to be better, and it worked out well in college. And I really met a lot of people, learned a lot, and now I'm got my opportunity to be in the industry. But yes, growing up in North Carolina, there was a lot of lakes. I was in between Lake Norman and High Rock Lake, two opposite fisheries, and I got to really learn a lot about fishing. And we'll probably get into more of the key fish that that set me on fire for it. But my dad is 100% the reason why I am even in love with the sport and have this opportunity to obviously pursue my dream of commentary and broadcasting.
That's awesome, man. I think that's where everybody's, I can't say everybody's. I'm sure everybody has a different outlook of how they started fishing, but there's always, a dad or an uncle or a grandfather or something, somebody's introduced you to the world of fishing. And I'm very thankful that I was introduced as a young kid, very, very, very young. I was probably, just walking. My dad and my family have loved fishing so long that I've just now, what was a hobby then has turned into more of a way of life for me, because, I don't fish professionally. I fish all the time, and I don't fish any, pro level tournaments. I fish or BFLs and things like that. So I'm not climbing the ladder like that. But as far as doing what I'm doing now and talking fishing and starting a YouTube channel and immersing myself into this thing, started from one fish, right? I don't know when that was, we all caught one fish. And since then, I've been hooked, and I saw the meme, and I'm sure everybody saw it, where it says, bluegill is the gateway drug to fishing, which is 100% the truth.
Well, for me, what's crazy is I can look back, and I don't know if I'll have time to pull up a photo real quick, but I can look back at pictures of me in a boat when I was, 2 years old tops. I mean, I was very, very young growing up in Florida for the first couple of years of my life, and mom and dad would take me out on the boat there and get the experience of just being on the water. That was the thing. It was being on the water. And then we went a few years. We moved to North Carolina. I think my dad was in between boats and ended up investing in a boat. And then that was really when the tournament side and the competitive side of it started. And so I really didn't even get into fun fishing. I was immersed into highest level you could possibly get as a kid and as an adult in your local region, just competitive atmosphere immediately. And so I honestly can say I have never once went out on the water and targeted a species other than bass. I've never fished for anything on purpose. I've caught other species, but I've never specifically went striper fishing or bluegill fishing or crappie fishing, catfish, nothing. It's literally been bass my whole life, and it's been at a competitive side. So if it pains me, and there are days that I sit there and have the conversation with my wife where I can't compete in tournaments, hardly anymore because of schedule. I can't fish a full series of stuff, and I can't fish the trail that I want to. I'd want to fish the Bassmaster Opens, and I can't do that because I work with Bassmaster. So there's always that competitive itch that gets me, but I funnel that to my career now, where I try to be better than I was than the prior day. And honestly, I've even looked at expanding my horizons. Maybe one day, maybe one shot that I can host an NBA game or an NFL game, because I watch sports consistently, and I'm like, I could do it for so many different sports, and maybe I'll just freelance and do it one time just to say I did it. But bass fishing's been everything to me.
That's cool. Yeah, you mentioned doing multiple sports. I mean, you could be like Tommy. He does the steel stuff, correct?
Tommy's incredible. He is. That's what's crazy is my coworkers always rag on me. They're like, "You are trying to get rid of Tommy," and I'm like, "Well, honestly, I can't get promoted. I can't take a step up, and he's like in the spot, you know." And but it's always fun and games. Anytime he gets sick or he's got a stomach bug or he ate bad food, everyone's like, "What did you do if you poisoned Tommy?" I would never do that because Tommy Sanders is one of my favorite people of all time, and he is a legend. I say it all the time. Jim Nance he wakes up every morning. Jim Nance wakes up every single morning and thanks the Lord above that Tommy Sanders got into bass fishing, because Jim Nance would not be the golf broadcasting icon that he is if it wasn't for Tommy being there, because Tommy is the Jim Nance of everything else. He is that calming voice. I mean, let's face it. I woke up Saturday mornings to Tommy's voice and to Zona's voice, so
man.
that's ingrained in me. But he is a legend. He's one of my favorite people. I'd like to say that he's one of my best friends, but I think that's a mutual thing. I've got to be his best friend, and he's got to be my best friend. But really, I'll take it as like a father figure to me in the broadcasting world for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah. So that's the thing with me is like, I think being in your shoes, and first off, just to give you a little background on what I do. I'm a high school teacher here in a local town in Southern Ohio by trade, and I teach video and sound technology. So I get to see, I get to teach this stuff and see, I focus a lot more on like your end of things. Like I see, as far as the overlays and everything, as far as the production goes. But I remember, being a kid, in the 90s, waking up like 6:30 on Saturday morning, and there's Tommy Sanders. Whether you could see him or not, you heard him and you knew exactly who it was. And you're right about that. The calming voice. He's just a phenomenal guy. And I think between you, Zona, and then Davey Height, dude, is a freaking hammer on the water anyway. But I think over the past couple of years of watching him step into a role of like a reporter on the water reporter. Like you guys just mesh really well. But I think that, I think Zona even mentioned it one time on one of your guys' shows. Like, you give Tommy Sanders, you tell him you got 37 seconds. He's going to end it in 37 seconds. He's just been there, for years.
He's taught me so much about, and I will say it's very, very intimidating to step into the arena of broadcasting with two of your favorite people and heroes in the sport. I mean, I was a fangirl as a kid, standing behind the metal gates and fences, waiting for them to finish with the hooked up stage at the Classic, just to meet them and say, hey, and now I get to work with them. So the first year and a half, I would say, of my broadcasting career on Bassmaster Live, I didn't know who I was. I tried to be a little bit of Tommy. I tried to be a little bit of Zona, but no one's ever going to be as funny as Zona and yet as professional as Zona. And then Tommy has that, like you said, calming voice, the leader of the ship. I mean, wherever Tommy goes, we will go with him. If he needs me to breach the door and bust through before him so that he's safe, we will do it. Tommy is the leader of the studio. It amazes me how well he is or how good he is at what he does. Like I heard him voicing over jury duty videos. I heard him voicing over a Colton Steakhouse ad and an East Tennessee fishing show promo. Like I'm like, everywhere I turn, I hear this man's voice. And I know it's not because I just listen to him every day at work, but he is everywhere. He has done so many different shows, and he is definitely a legend in the sport. With all due respect to any other broadcaster out there, I always say this. I love Chris Collinsworth and Marv Albert and all of these different broadcasters across all the sports. Tony Romo is great. Jim Nance obviously works with Tony for CBS and whatnot. But I could take Tommy Sanders, myself, Mark Zona, and if Davey wanted to come along with other sports, he can as well. But I guarantee you we could do an NFL game on Sunday, and you wouldn't even know that we were brand new to doing that, because we mesh well as a crew, as a team. And the stuff that our crew behind the scenes has tackled with the amount of staff that we have, it's incredible. I will go to war with those people because they're some of the most skilled people ever. But Tommy, there's no uncomfortable situations when you're around Tommy, because he's going to walk you through it. He's going to hold your hand, or at times he's just going to push you, and you're going to get out of the nest, and you're going to have to fly. You're going to have to fly real quick.
Yeah. Yeah, so not only are you working with like, a hammer squad when it comes to like production, I don't know who actually wrote the article, but I was reading there a few days, it's been several months, probably years ago when they talk about, actually it could have been too long ago, but they were doing a behind the scenes of the new Bassmaster setup there. You have as far as the was it in Arkansas there, right? Is
Yeah,
that
the
where
whole production studio
yeah,
and
the production studio. So they were talking about, and as far as the quality of the show, and now it being live, which is another wrench to throw into plans. But there's very little people that's making that thing happen. On the backside of things, in the well, and I'm going to call post production, which is really not post because it's live. The people that run the switchers and the directors and stuff, that you guys are like bare bones and skeleton crew compared to like a legit, you go like CNN or something, and there'd be 100 people on staff, and you guys are working with a fifth of that or something.
It is incredible that they sometimes these productions have 60 to 80 people and they're on rotating schedules. I mean, if you think about it, we probably have 15 to 20 people on site at the studio. We're not counting the cameramen out on the water or the directors and the tech folks at the venues that help with those different things. But we have 15 to 20 people that make the whole thing run. So when people want to talk about Bassmaster is a family, it is much more of a family than a corporation, because that's the way we treat it. So I know that whenever someone asks me for a stat or a fact, it's my buddy Bruce and David, and they're the ones who are going to work it up. And I know what I have to say to them for them to do it the correct way, or they know how to ask me a question so that I give them their answer they're wanting. Whereas if you have different producers and different directors per show, you can have those people you don't like to work with. But man, we've got everyone does the job of 3 people. And so I said, man, if we could, I don't need to hire more people. We just need to somehow figure out how to clone you guys or train others to be just like us, because we have some Terminators behind the scenes that make it work. But you were talking about, you're a teacher and an educator. This all started in high school for me, this whole journalism and video production. Before the commentating ever came, in Miss Page's digital media class, we got the opportunity to pick up a camera for the first time. I shot high school football on Friday nights, and that developed into a job in college during the summers at a news station. Shout out to WFMY News too, and Greensboro for giving me a shot back in the day. And now, I mean, I've touched every aspect of media to where nothing's really uncomfortable. And that's what's really exciting, is that the options are open. If they want me to be the host, I'll be the host. If they want me to be the side commentator for just stats, I'll do that. And everything's kind of comfortable. But every day is a learning day. And we're going through that now. We've got a bunch of extra unique shows and shoots that we're producing this week. If people watch it later, the week before Christmas, that we're pumping out content there. So there's no real off season for Bassmaster, I'll say.
Yeah, that's the thing. So like I said, you work with an awesome crew, and it's bare bones and stuff, but you get to see some of the best fishermen on the planet pretty much day in and day out, especially during the summer. I guess spring through summer and fall, but I guess you guys will be gearing up to hit Florida soon, I assume.
Yep.
But so how, as a bass fisherman that's grown up bass fishing, how has watching the best fishermen on the planet day in and day out, how has it changed the way you fish personally on the water?
Man, I don't give myself any slack, that's for sure. I'm like, these guys can catch them during these conditions, I should be able to go do it as well. But one thing I've really learned is, because I don't get to go out all the time now, the way I approach fishing is time of year, seasonally, what should be going on, and what I want to catch them on. I see so many pros that have to go through 17 different rods of different things, trying it to try to win $100,000 and to try to win one of 10 of the major professional trophies that they can get that year. And so they're trying everything. Some guys would rather fish with certain things and finish 20th, and some guys will try anything just to win. And so when I go out fishing now, I fish with what I want to catch them on that day. And then I figure out how to make it work. Whether I need to go find dirty water, whether I need to go find shallower or deeper water, find grass, rock. That's what I have to do now, because I don't have ample time to go create a pattern, to go fish it for 2 or 3 days in a row and to really fine tune it. I need to go out now, and it's kind of a pressure cooker situation. I've got a limited amount of time out there, and I need to go catch what I can catch. And to be honest, 5 fish has always been plenty for me. I don't need to go and see how many I can catch. It's always, that's the mark. If I can catch 5 in a day, if we would have had a tournament today, I would have done it. Even fun fishing days, I try to leave at safe light when we're supposed to. And by 3 o'clock, if I'm fishing till 5, I look down at my graph and it's 3 o'clock. I'm like, well, I would have had 3 fish for 10 pounds today. That's not going to cut it, and I keep fishing, but it's always in the hopes of getting better. But man, I see these guys day in and day out, and they catch them. They catch them when they're not supposed to catch them. They catch them when it's wide open, when it's flooded, when it's cold. We see magic happen, and I'll say that we have been blessed. Almost every day we turn on the cameras and go live, something incredible has happened where it's a brand new day. I love the routine of Bassmaster Live. You wake up, you get there. We're going to go through a couple screen of knowledge hits. We're going to do the unlock the lakes. We're going to watch some fish catches, and then we're going to call it a day. But within those same tasks, it's a brand new world. No idea who's going to catch them. The guys who we think have the best pattern end up faltering. The guys who are on nothing figure something new out. So it's a brand new day. So I don't give myself as much slack when I fish, but I know I probably should, because I see the best in the world figure it out. But I also see sometimes, man, they are blindsided by a tough day.
Yeah, and I mean, these guys are pros for a reason. They're out there; they can catch them in a mud hole with a Zebco 33 and a Kelly's Firetail. These guys are, can catch them. And some of the stuff that I see, from the productions you guys do and watch them, in their own social media aspect and things, is that these guys have an instinctual knowledge of what you're talking about, what to throw when. But you're right, man. Like sometimes you'll see, I think, Ott the foe's not so bad, but there's some pros like, you look at Edwin Evers, he might have 45 rods on the deck. And like you said, he's looking for something they will eat because he knows he's going to find one eventually. I think that's one of my biggest downfalls is that I read a story recently that made sense to me, is that somebody said that you're not going to win many one-day tournaments fishing patterns unless you're fishing this, if it's your home lake. You know what I mean? If you say, oh, well, the fish should be hitting topwater, I'm going to fish that. You're probably not going to win that many tournaments or, catch many if you're just fun fishing. Whereas, fishing high percentage spots for those one-day tournaments are probably a better deal, because, you're maximizing your chances to catch fish on those spots as opposed to hoping that the pattern is going to work out for you.
Yeah, it's incredible. When you have even the Bassmaster Classic, I think that's the closest equivalent we have to a one-day tournament, and that's not because it's one less day than an elite event. Being a 3 days of competition, it's different than the Elite Series, but it's also different because you can run patterns in the Classic, but those patterns they will die at some point, and new patterns will arise. And so we always see that because they practice Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then they practice Wednesday, and then tournament starts Friday. So what they found Friday, Saturday, Sunday may not even be happening Wednesday when they go out there for official day. And then what they figure out Wednesday could be different on Friday. So that gap in time really shows those instinctual fishermen that put those high percentage baits in their hand, or the confidence baits, and then the ones who do not get stuck on what happened yesterday. And so I think that we've seen that. Jordan Lee's won 2 classics. He won them back-to-back on 2 opposite fisheries. He caught them at Conroe fishing offshore. Then he caught them obviously fishing offshore, but more in the springtime. South Texas in the spring is a little different than Hartwell in the spring. Catching them 2 different ways. I think he caught them on 6 different baits that week. We saw him on the docks catching him on a wacky rig on the final day. We saw him on a jerkbait and some guts. Same thing for Hank Cherry. When he's going to – those 2 guys have won back-to-back classics in the last 6 or 7 years, and they haven't won an Elite Series event. Neither one of them have won an Elite Series event. So I think that bodes to the way they like to fish, the high percentage things that they put in their hands, but also they go with the flow. I mean, Hank Cherry wants to throw a jerkbait. And if you saw the 10-pounders that I have in my phone that he sent me when I said, how was practice? And he said, I hope nothing changes, because he was catching, I think he caught a limit's worth of 7-pounders plus on a jerkbait in practice. And we ended up seeing in the tournament that the jerkbait put the 2 to 3 pounders in the boat that filled his limit, but then he catches them, the better ones, on a bladed jig or flipping or a swim jig. So, which is something that's out of his not necessarily comfort zone, but it's not what you think of it. So, I think those one-day tournaments are definitely, like you said, it's less pattern driven and more instinctual, and just, your breadcrumb trail. When you have like a 4-day elite event after 3 days of practice, those breadcrumbs are much closer to each other. But when you have a classic, there's a lot of gaps in it, and you can get lost before you get to your next breadcrumb. And so I think that those some guys are wired for those shorter tournaments that change so much.
Yeah, I agree with that. Fred Redfern says, "Hats off to the cameramen on the water. They have great balance from head to toe." I agree with that 100%. Put 30-pound of camera on your shoulders and 4 to 5s on Great Lake somewhere, and then you're pretty much have to strap me to the back pole of the seat to keep me from falling in. Mark Shannon says, "What's one lake you've covered that you was in awe of the number of bass and quality?"
That's a good one, Mark. In awe of the number and of the quality, I think that Lake Eufaula in Alabama and Lake Seminole, not far from Eufaula, in Georgia, Florida, Alabama, all on that border. I think those are two very special bodies of water that we don't necessarily have a bunch of pro level events on it. Now, we've had Eufaula the last few years. They go in little streaks, We'll fish 2 or 3 events there in a 4-year stretch. But I think those places have some of the biggest fish that you'll see, especially that Spring Creek area on Seminole and whatnot. Those are some special places. When it comes to smallmouth and whatnot, man, places in Michigan that I've been with Mark Zona, even the Upper Peninsula. We had the AOI Championship up there at Beta Knock in Escanaba, Michigan. Some of the craziest places and special places we'll ever go. And then I'll throw out Cayuga. Cayuga is a great place that you can catch smallmouth and largemouth. And one thing that's cool is, depending on time of year when we show up there, it could be a smallmouth event. And then the next time we go, we won't see one weighed in. So I think there's a lot of really unique places. But when you start thinking about lakes, there's not too many places that you can have Elite Series events on. Everybody wants us to go to new lakes and new places, but there's really, when you think about it, there's probably 35 to 40 lakes tops that you're going to have quality, quantity, a good host town and whatnot. So we've been to a lot of great places over the years, but those are some places that we have just touched a little bit that are really special every time we turn the camera on.
Yeah, a buddy of mine and I, one of my good buddies, we're making a trip to Fork. We're going to actually go on a little bit late. We're going to go. I can only travel my spring break because the school gives me 3 months off in the summer. They get a little ticked off when I try to take time off during the school year, which I understand. But we're headed out for a week to Lake Fork, which being from Ohio, it's 15 hours from here. I got a pretty good trip ahead of me. I'm flying to his. He actually is from my area, but works in Huntsville, Alabama.
Okay.
He's a steel worker, so I'm flying to his camper, and then we're leaving Easter Sunday, and then we're driving from there out to Fork. So I'm hoping to best my PB, which is not that big, to be honest with you. It's about 6.5 pounds, but I think that if I'm gonna have an opportunity to catch one, that's definitely a place to up my odds.
I tried to go off the beaten path there, and I'll even throw a Bull Shoals out there. I think Bull Shoals is one of the most incredible bodies of water. When you get a mixture of all 3 species, and then they put out, when the weather gets worse in the Bull Shoals region, the fishing gets better. And so there are some places like that, but I didn't even mention Lake Fork because that's a standard. It's like you lock it in 1A or 1B, and then everything else is debatable. But to see how much pressure Lake Fork gets and to see the special fireworks that happen, we're either going to have a tough fall tournament in 2020, but Patrick Walters goes and wins by over 25 pounds and breaks 100. That is so cool to see. Lee Livesey catch 42 pounds on the final day and have the 3rd biggest bag ever, the best bag on Bassmaster Live. And Patrick Walters, he came to my house the night after the final day. He drove after weigh-in and stopped in Little Rock. And I'm like, how's it feel to catch 31 and to not have a shot? And he's like, dude, it's the weirdest feeling ever, catching 30 pounds and no one's coming around to watch you because they're over there watching someone catch 40 pounds. He said, I knew that something special was happening, but it's very, very interesting to see how Lake Fork plays out every year. And so this year, even though it's a similar time of year, it'll be a little different somehow. So I know that somebody like Keith Combs is hoping it's a little more offshore or it's a little more post spawn than it has been. But we've seen a little bit of everything when we go.
Yeah, like I said, I'm like a kid in a candy store, man. I can't wait to get out there. Watching Patrick catch all his bass on a jerk bait, and in the timber, which it's crazy. Like stuff like that works out, but it's got to be a right hook, like you're talking about, knowing that you got 31, 32 pounds, and like you're like, yeah, man, that's cool on any other day, but
Right to
takes
the
10,
gut for
yeah,
sure.
it takes tens to win here, baby.
Yeah.
Basically what it is. So, it's crazy stuff. CJ Showalter, need more music, please. I hope you're talking about a single I released a couple years ago. If that's the case, I do have a new single out that will be coming out here in a few months. It is not about fishing, I'm sad to say. But Ronnie, I do have a fishing song out on YouTube, or I'm
That's
sorry,
awesome.
out on iTunes and pretty much anywhere. You can search my name, Tyler Waller. It's called My World.
I think I saw that. I saw that promo for it on your profile today. I don't know if it's the pinned post or
It
whatever.
is pinned, yeah.
Go check it out. Now I need to click on it, listen to it. Hey, I'm the best singer I know when no one else is around. I know that, but when everybody else is around, I'm very, very average.
Yeah. Let's see. He said, I think I know, but was wondering why Bass hasn't returned to Amistad or Falcon. Those lakes were epic.
Well, and that's the biggest thing is when you're scheduling tournaments, it's not let's pick the best lake. At the end of the day, Bassmaster is a business. And so when we come to town, we don't just pull permits for a lake boat ramp and just show up and put our trailer and our stage there and have a tournament. We want the whole host community to be involved. And with what Amistad and Falcon and the whole west side of Texas is dealing with the last few years, whether it's the droughts or the border and whatnot, it's very hard to go and ask a community to invest money for a tournament to come there when they have a lot of other things going on. So hopefully soon, I feel like every year we get a little bit closer that, hey, maybe if the West Coast changes its ways a little bit, we'll be able to go out west. Maybe if certain things lessen up and tighten up a little bit for us, we could go to the western side of Texas because those are some special places. And it makes those records seem untouchable when they've been standing for so long and you've gone to so many great bodies of water and gotten close, but you can't break through. I'd love to see that. And I believe Amistad had taken a dip for a little while there. I don't know if it didn't have any grass and then it got a bunch of grass, or vice versa. It had a bunch of grass and it all died off and now it's coming back. But that changes where the fishing is, and we want to go to a town and leave it better than we found it. So hopefully when we do get to go there, we can really drive people to go and fish there safely. So I'm excited about those two destinations though.
Awesome. Yeah. So I guess a burning question I have, maybe you can't answer this, but, and I'm sure it's got to do with what you're alluding to there as far as the place that it's at and how well that it's, taken in. But, we're getting ready to see the third classic at Hartwell in 7 years, I think.
I think we've got 15, 18, and 22. Yeah. So yeah, 3 out of the last 7, but I think five total or 4 total or something like that. I think 08 was the prior.
Yeah, so I've been to the previous 2, and Casey Ashley won, and then you had Jordan Lee went in there, and it's always a great town. Like that it used to be Bonza Course Center. There it was a really nice arena and stuff. I just I feel like that, I'm sure, like I said, there's way more things that go into it than just lakes and stuff. But I feel like that they're I don't know. I guess that Hartwell shows out sometimes, and then in 15 was I think, unless it's been beaten now, was the coldest Bassmaster Classic ever. It was like 18 degrees at takeoff.
Yeah, it was actually like 8. It was 8. There was a boat frozen to the bunks of the trailer, and we had to shake it off of there at the takeoff. But it is a very interesting body of water. I think it would be a great one if we had it in the summer as well, because you'd have the herring, offshore, that kind of bite. But people do want the Classic to go to different places. But man, when you look at it, the Classic is the biggest event in our sport. But it's not necessarily the biggest event in any given town at any given time. There's a lot of things that happen and go on, but places like Knoxville was super cool to go there for a classic. That was an unreal classic. Fort Worth, big enough but not too big of a city where we were able to have our run of things and work with the town and really promote the event. Uh, Birmingham's always going to be special because that's just bass fishing capital of the world over there. But you see those towns and what they make up. But when you go to a Chicago or a Detroit or a Houston, there are 5, 6, 7 gigs in town that week. And they may be bigger, they may take away, or the town might not want to have you there as much as we previously thought. Different things like that. Not saying any of those cities I listed, but those are top 15 population cities in the world, or in the country. So you want to go to places where there's a lot of people so they can go check it out. But the Greenvilles and the Anderson, South Carolinas for Lake Hartwell, there might not be a better town in America that loves bass fishing and comes out for it. Regionally, it's accessible by so many places, and Hartwell's a special place because you can really pick your poison on what you want to do, and it's been won differently every time. I mean, how Jason Christie was winning that classic and how Edwin Evers was winning that classic was different than the way that Jordan Lee won that classic, and that was just, it all changed on the final day. And then even before, when Casey Ashley won that classic, it was as frigid as it could get. It's set up perfectly for the local, but he wasn't leading on day one. There were some other factors, and he had to work his way up there. But I love that place. People want us to go to different places, but man, Hartwell is a special place, and it doesn't have the biggest fish, but man, there's a strategic aspect of it when you go there, because you don't know if it's going to be March and it's going to be close to the spawn, or if it's going to be late winter, early pre-spawn type deal. So we will see this year. I feel like because we had such a late winter last year, it may come in a little bit earlier this year. So it could start the spring a little quicker, I feel.
Yeah, I'm hoping to make it down for this classic, so maybe we'll run into each other down there for sure. But I can't wait to see what's going on down there. I love, some of the biggest spotted bass on the planet in that lake, it seems like, and there's, I think like you said, you can pick your poison, catch them, 100 different ways there. I mean, Kyle and I, my best friend Kyle and I were fishing, before the classic there a few days, just fishing around while we are waiting on the classic to start. And, you might pull up on a spot that looks like it's 8 feet deep, and next thing you know, you're in 45 foot of water. It's just sheer drop offs and a lot of different things, which is pretty cool, which, like I said, it lends back to what you're saying, is I think that those people like the Jordan Lees and the people that, I feel like that, I've been pulling for my dude, Matt Robertson. Like, I feel like that he's going to be a contender, because that dude can catch him pretty much anywhere he goes, and he is an absolute riot. So if he were to win a classic, it would be one for the ages for sure.
Oh, it would be one that was very memorable and wild and fun and entertaining for sure. Matt's a great personality, and we're glad to have him on the Bassmaster Elite Series, because he's going to push the envelope on certain things, whether they're rules that have been in place for a while or new instances we've never had to deal with before. But I think that I think he's genuine. I think that's him. But when the cameras come on, he makes it more of him. You know what I'm saying? And so it reminds me of an Ike and Ellie. Ike is the same way on camera as he is off camera. But when the camera's on and he knows it, he gets to lay it on thicker than normal, and he gets to show you who he really is and how much he loves the sport. Like, he yells when no one's around and he catches a 1.5 pound fish. I remember one of my favorite photos I've ever had taken of me. Steve Bowman saw us on the final day of practice, and I rode with Ike in the 2018 Classic because I was not sure, because he's threatened this for years, if that was going to be his final Classic. I wasn't sure. So I was like, he's going to be one we're going to have on camera, and I want to go with someone we're going to be talking about all day on live on day one and learn about the body of water. And we had pulled up on a couple places, and he's like, look at the graph, and it's lit up, and he catches a couple white bass and hybrid and striper, and he's like, man. And he's like, there's got to be some bass in here. And I remember him casting out there in the ditch and bringing it through, and he hooks one, and it comes up to the surface, and it was green. And he immediately just ran down to me in the passenger seat and gave me a big hug, as if I helped him figure that out. And I'm just sitting there watching, and he's like, I think we can make this work, and he did pretty well in the Classic, as, not a top 10 the whole entire event. But he's one that's going to go and have a shot to win these classics. He's going to be top 10 or bottom 10, because that's how he's going to sell out for this, because it is the biggest show in our sport, and it's the biggest prize and trophy, and it makes your name. And man, if you win one or if you go to one, you want to go back so many times. I mean, I've never watched a classic and not cried at the winning moment on the stage, because it is one of the coolest things, knowing that person's life changed, but 40,000 people watching him in the arena, their life changed, and at home, because I was that kid who got to watch those classic weigh-ins, and my life changed, and now I'm here. So I have a respect for that, because it is the greatest show in our sport.
Yeah, and I think that any fisherman on the planet would have to understand that, and then they would know that just being at the classic is a life goal for anybody. We're not talking about like even an elite series event, which takes years of dedication and being a hammer to even join the ranks of those people, but like just stepping foot on a Bassmaster Classic stage, whether you catch 100-pound or 0 pounds, like it's something that every angler on the planet wants to actually do at least once in their life, and it's going to be a small minuscule amount of people that actually get to do that. But I, on the other hand, will tell you, if you're out there watching and have never been to a Bassmaster Classic, make it happen soon, because it's going to be a life-changing event for you, because you're going to see roll emotion from these anglers, knowing that they're on the stage that it could be a once in a lifetime effort for them, and you go out there swinging for the fences, like you were talking about for Ike and Ellie, and the thing is that like Davey Height and KVDs and all the people that have won Bassmaster Classics in the past, you remember the winner, but nobody gives a crap about number 2.
Yeah, and I think the only person that we actually care about that finished second was Aaron Martins, because he did it so many times. But that just goes to show not his inability to win it, but just how good he is to be in position in the biggest event in the sport, time and time again. It's incredible. But think about this. We know Mike Iaconelli, Bassmaster Classic champion. We know Takahiro Omori, Bassmaster Classic champion. Those guys won events, the Classic, 18, 20 years ago, and we still know them as that. That speaks highly to the accolade that it is, that you don't have to win it 3, 4, 5 times for people to remember that you won one. You could win one in the early 2000s. You could win one in 99 like Davey Height. You could win one in 04 like Takahiro, and you will always be referred to as a Classic champion. That's why I think it's so special with Hank Cherry going back to back, that not only did he win his Classic and he's going to always be remembered as that, now he's one of 4 anglers to win back to back. And he's one of like 6 anglers, I believe, or 8 anglers to win more than one. There are only a few hundred people in the world who have ever fished a Classic, and that list is even shorter for those who have even won a Classic. So it is very, very cool to even be a part of that, and to be in the back rooms interviewing them when they're going to the final day. We have no stress or no pressure, but we have no idea the outcome either. So we get to hang on every single fish catches. Was that the one? Was that the one? And you see those crazy moments that people won't believe. Yeah, I caught a 4-pounder, and in the process, I trolled over a bush that I later turned around and caught a 1-pounder out of that helped me win the Classic. Hank Cherry will tell that story forever, that he literally flipped at a bush that his Mercury just came through to catch one of his last keepers, for him to even be able to have a chance to win over Matt Airy this year.
Yeah, it's crazy. Marciano says other tourists went to Lake Cumberland. He's talking about here in Kentucky. Is there any discussion for that for the Elite Series event?
That would be a super cool one. I am all in favor for those Highland type lakes, the Chatoogs of the world with spotted bass, the Cumberlands that have all 3 species, the Table Rocks and the Bull Shoals. I think those are very interesting because people can finesse, people can power fish. But every year there are going to be places that wanted to have an event that couldn't have an event. Maybe they were outbid. Maybe they wanted to just test the waters. But I will say this, a way you can know that those discussions have been in place is if any of our other levels have gone there. If our opens have gone there, the college series, high school, the nation, at team championship, if any lake has ever hosted one of those events, it may be a stepping stone to being able to host an Elite Series event or a Classic, those things, because you got to get your feet wet on hosting a big Bassmaster event and knowing what entails with it, what the community has to provide for the anglers that come into town, the ramps and the amenities that come with needing the space. And then you got to basically double that and prepare for, you got to be a farmer that plants during a drought, preparing for rain. You got to have enough space to host an elite event, praying for a big turnout, because they will show up and you don't want to have the small venue that you can't do it. So Cumberland's hosted a lot of big ones, but I would love to see that, especially like in an early to late April type thing where it could be pre-spawn or it's kind of got, they're all stages. Because Bull Shoals a few years ago for the college series, around that time period, it was unreal how many 15-pound bags there were. You had to be in the top 80 to do that. And everybody wants 20-pound bags, but it speaks well for a body of water when a very respectable weight, a 3-pound average, goes that deep into a field.
Yeah, it's kind of like Mark Shannon here talks about a classic in the 80s in Louisville, Kentucky. I wasn't aware of that one. Maybe I was, but I know they had the one in Pittsburgh there, the Tri Rivers or whatever.
I think Nixon won that one, and the Ohio River in Louisville. It might have been one of Nixon's classics, but go on. Yeah.
So then, the Tri Rivers there in Pittsburgh when KVD won it, like it was a 3-day tournament and it was like 12-pound won the thing.
And like that's the coolest thing. I love when a 6-pounder can take the lead in an event. And I love when a 1.5 pounder could, because it seems so easy. Yet on those bodies of water at that given time, it was a miracle. And you see guys getting excited for a 12-ounce fish. It's incredible. I'll remember Gerald Swindle lost so many fish that were just this big, and they would have won in the Classic, or Aaron Martin's losing that one fish, and it would have been, the Classic winner. It's crazy.
Yeah. So I'm with you. I like that aspect of the fishing there. So
we need a grinder every year. I know the pros don't want it. I know the fans necessarily don't always want it. But I will say this. I had an avid fan of the sport tell me one year when all 3 professional trails were fishing at the same exact weekend, because that's just how it goes. When they're fishing on the same weekend, they were at 2 very well-known, bigger fish, higher weight tournaments, and we were at Winyah Bay in South Carolina. And the guy was like, dude, I turned on the other ones and I could not keep my eyes off of Winyah Bay. I had to keep coming back, and I focused on that event because you had the guys who fished close and played it safer, more fishing time, maybe less weight. And then you had the guys losing a quarter of their day for hopes of bigger bags and higher potential. That is the strategy we want to see. I think that is incredible. When you see Paul Mueller on the St. John's go way north of Palatka and try something different, or you see Gary Klaus go way south of Palatka. So I love those grinders where it's not as easy. The Sabine River's tough, but it's been won in a different area every time we've been there. It's never been the same area. So I enjoy that kind of thing because it's brand new. Even though we know it, it's going to sing a different tune this time.
Yeah, and like I said, I live like literally, I can almost throw a rock and hit the Ohio River here where I'm at. I'm in the most southern tip of Ohio, so I get to fish the mighty Ohio a lot. And there's been some hammers come out of our area that can catch fish no matter where they're at, because I think that if you grow up fishing in like one of the toughest fisheries on the planet, then if you can catch them there, you can pretty much catch them anywhere. I watched an interview one time with KVD, and the guy was like, it was backstage somewhere in an event, is like, Kevin, what's your favorite place to fish? He's like, Lake St. Clair, no doubt. You can go there and catch a 5-pounder any time of the year. He said, where's your least favorite place to fish? He's like, the Ohio River.
I went over the Ohio River through Cincinnati going to St. Clair this past summer, and I took a photo and I said, I bet you Bill Lowen's caught all 7 bass that are pictured in this photo. And I joke about that, but you said it right. North Carolina is very similar. I think there's so many pros in North and South Carolina because there are big fish in those states and in those lakes. But if you can train yourself to catch 12 to 14 pounds at any given tournament, at any given lake in those states, you're going to do well. And so if you can average 12 to 14 pounds in an Elite Series event, you'll do pretty well. But lately, man, you can't slack. You got to catch them, and you got to catch them big, because you're going to be surprised when you come into weigh and you're like, yeah, I had 19 pounds and I decided to lay off them and save them. And I'm in 47th place now at some of these places. So you got to catch what you can catch and either pray the pattern holds up or be open-minded enough to keep going at it. But that's the battle. And I like the Ohio River type things. I think it's very interesting because I live in Arkansas, and even Lake Dardanelle is very tough at certain times. Like I have a rule: I never fish Lake Dardanelle, um, before April 15th because we have so much flooding and so much cold water coming through the Arkansas River. That place is so difficult to figure out. But once it gets a little warmer, you get that, I guess that what is it, Memorial Day in May. You get around Father's
Yeah.
Day, Mother's Day. It's wide open on whatever you want to do. But that spring on rivers in general, very, very tough. But I enjoy them.
Yeah. So I always ask everybody that's on my show the same question, and I'll ask you, and I'll give you mine before I ask your thing. But I always ask for a bait that you'll never leave home without, and one you think's overrated. So my first bait that I'll never leave home without is some kind of Texas rig, probably going to be a Zoom speed crawl, jackal chunk crawl, some kind of creature bait. Probably a 3/16 ounce tungsten bullet weight with a probably 4/0 Gamakatsu offset shank worm hook. That's going to be my absolute. If I'm going bass fishing, that rig is going with me, or I'm not going bass fishing. And a bait that I feel like is overrated, which although I see pros is hammering on it, is the whopper plopper. I've never caught them.
It's got its place and time for sure. And I got a good whopper plopper story in a big tournament that we might get into later. But I got to take a chatterbait anywhere I go. You can catch them on a chatterbait anywhere, any time of year, cold, hot, bluegill, shad, doesn't matter. And you can change up your trailer, obviously, to mimic whatever you want. And so I'm going to go with a chatterbait. And if I had to pick a color, I think Beehite Delight's pretty standard. A little bit of green pumpkin with chartreuse in it. You can pluck out the chartreuse if you just want green pumpkin. You can pluck out the green pumpkin if you just want chartreuse. But one that I think is overrated is a glide bait. I really do. I have seen way too many guys get just infatuated with it and burn their tournament down for it. And so I'm like, just pick up a wacky rig, bro, and catch your fifth keeper. But you're dying. You're dying out here. Just go catch fifth keeper, and then you can throw it the last 3 hours. But you got to catch five, or you're not going to compete. And so I always rag on some of those guys. I just did a tackle tip Tuesday on a glide bait today with Clifford Perch because he's one of the West Coast guys that was skeptical, but has now introduced it into his game. It has a time and place, and it will draw some fish. But man, I don't care how many fish I see during a tournament. I want to know how many I catch, and I've seen way too many fish and not caught them with those baits. But I think there's gonna be a tide that turns because I remember a frog being the same thing in the early to mid 2000s. There would be those anglers that would lock a frog in their hand and they would die with it. They would just throw the frog, and they'd come in with 3 or 4 on the final day. And you're like, you pick up a swim jig, you fill your limit, you win. And I think that the frog has become much more of a, I know when to pick it up and throw it. And I think now the glide bait is you have to throw it a bunch to get used to it, and people get sucked into that. But they'll now know it's a time and place. A huge dock, a big rock wall, a silo in the water, or a bridge, certain big structures that you want to draw one big fish off of where fish live a high percentage place. I think you'll learn to pick it up at certain times and it'll be incorporated and won't be featured.
Yeah, and I'm with you on the glide bait. Like I've not went into the realm of throwing a glide bait yet, but I feel like that a giant swim bait is in that same market of like it.
What's giant?
Well, not say giant. I'll say 8-inch plus
Okay.
swim baits.
Because I was super skeptical about the mag drafts. I will say that, just throwing that chunk of plastic out there. But then when I put down a 6-inch Senko beside of it or a 5-inch Senko and it's barely longer than that, I'm like, man, if we go to that size bait, yes, the profile is different, but that length of a bait that matches forage perfectly, how does this one that's just a little longer not match it as well? And so I was super skeptical on the soft plastic, the bigger ones like that. But I don't know. I have a 10-inch mag draft in my garage and I have not thrown it, but I have it just in case. But those 6s, that seems to be much more of a, it's becoming easier to throw that in a tournament and not hero or zero. But glide baits, I don't know. I think you can miss the cadence on that so easily that, and you can get out of tune with it and really just miss them.
Hey Nate, wait, what's up, buddy? I think that somebody that is kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum of you as far as catching those things all the time on glide baits and stuff is Chris Zaldane. Like he seems like he can catch fish with them no matter what. I'm sure he throws them a lot, but he seems to have more luck with them than anybody I've seen.
Yeah, Chris is one that has made me buy. Every time I buy a mag draft, I text him a photo so he knows he can be proud of me. But yeah, it's a different mindset. It is definitely a different mindset, and there's definitely a strategy on where how you have to practice to do that. But then just like the instincts that pop up on knowing what a good dock is on Lake Norman when there's millions of docks, knowing which ones are key for your pattern is important. It's the same thing with a swim bait. You're not just throwing it anywhere and everywhere. Where some of these guys, you can definitely tell who's attacking the cover or attacking the shoreline or the point with a swim bait, and some who are just picking it up and throwing it. And so I think that that's why it's so hit or miss for the public on getting a hold of it, because it's not as what they tell us they're doing is not necessarily what they're thinking. They know, they see a little bitty boil behind it 100 yards away, and they're like, I need to speed it up or I need to slow it down. They're getting too good of a look at it. They're not getting a good enough look at it, and so there's intricacies to that for sure.
Yeah. Tristan Cobb. Hey, what's up,
Tristan?
buddy? Mark Shannon here is getting older and now trying to learn easier techniques like the drop shot. Nobody did it like Aaron Martins. Do you have any tips you can share?
Well, I want to hear your Ohio River tips on how you catch fish. Yeah, I mean, you probably have to whip it out because it gets bites, but I would say with a drop shot is be patient with it, but you don't have to fish it as slow as people do. I think that a lot of people want to throw a drop shot straight down. They just want to drop it down. And this is me emulating my bail is open and I'm holding my line and I'm just dropping it straight below the trolling motor, looking at fish. I think a drop shot is almost just as deadly when you're not looking at your graph. People always say the two. I'm an older guy and I don't like electronics, so I'm not going to pick up a drop shot. Pitching that thing around dock poles, even laydowns, if you up your line size, maybe even throw it on a bait caster, pitching it around bushes on the edges and whatnot, you can definitely use that drop shot in different ways. That's not straight down. If the fish didn't follow it down, they're not going to eat it. I need to throw a tiny bait. I think, honestly, also, I think that there are a lot more drop shot baits that get bit than what the public sees in tournaments. You got to go with the trends on those. But I did ask a friend, I said, does anybody throw a robo worm anymore? Because that's all you did I have 100 bags of robo worms in Martin's Magic,
yeah.
Margarita Mutilator and all those different things because that's what you did. But now no one throws it for smallmouth. But I think that everyone introduced it to smallmouth. They've designed baits specifically for smallmouth, and that's changed. But I have seen that robo worm come down the United States regionally, where Floridians buy robo worms for drop shots for out, in those bowl lakes and on brush piles, or the Alabamas of the world. I think that the drop shot and some of those OG drop shot baits still come in handy plenty.
Yeah. My tip for a drop shot, as Ronnie was mentioning, that first off, my boat is a 2006 Stratus with 6-inch graphs. So I don't have we're not looking at, down scan, side scan. I'm looking down, I can see there's a rock there and there might be a fish on it, but, the hummingbirds I have are amazing for what they were, 15 years ago, but they're lagging behind. But when you make a cast, especially if you're making long casts, which is huge when you're smallmouth fishing, if you're in like a body like Lake St. Clair, which is my favorite places on the planet to fish, it's super clear a lot of the times. Like you're talking 10, 12, 15 foot of visibility. And another thing is when you're making those super long casts with a drop shot is you have to figure out the amount of space you have between your hook and your drop shot weight is going to change by the amount of angle that your line is taking. So if you have a 6-inch leader from your hook to your weight, if you're 70 yards from that thing, it's going to be an inch off the bottom, probably dragging the bottom. So if you're making long casts with a drop shot, I mean, it's not unheard of for me to have like an 18-inch leader there from the hook down to my drop shot bait, especially if I'm making super long casts, because I'm taking into consideration the angle of that line from my rod tip down to where it's at. I'm not huge on physics or anything like that, but I know that the farther you're stretching that line out, the angle of that triangle that you're creating there is going to be more and more steep, depending on how far you cast the lure.
And I also think that it's important to know the species you're targeting. Smallmouth feed up, and so you often see people dropping on them or having to up that because your bait's going to be below them, unless they're obviously like looking at them at the bottom like gobies or whatever, and plucking them off the bottom. But with largemouth, I mean, they're going to be towards the bottom at times, and so it's okay if it's not that far in a casting situation off the bottom. When you have, like you said, that angle. Or if your fish are suspended, you're going to have to handle that a different way. But drop shot was something that I didn't really have a bunch of confidence in. I remember at Lake Chateaugue in one of my national championships I fished in college, my front graph was blacked out. I guess it got water in it, seized up. It was just a little, let's just say this. It was a Garmin when Garmin was in bass fishing years ago, because Garmin took an absence from bass fishing and came back and got all the pros like Greg Hackney and Jason Christie at the time. So this was Gen 1 Garmin's, like small unit, blacked out. The back graph, I would ask my partner, I said, how deep are we? And he's like 40 feet. And I'm like, okay, I'll start casting. So that's what I had experience with. And I could catch them without it. And so I think that you just need to use your instincts on it and get around fish and then just let it do its thing. I say also, I want to feel the bottom, but you have to go as light as you possibly can and still maintain bottom contact, because you don't want to get snagged. You don't want it to just thud down there. You want the action of that bait. You want to be able to barely touch your line and that bait wants to move. Whereas if it's weighted down by a lot, you're going to have to pump that rod to even get some kind of action or get it off the bottom. So there's a couple different intricacies to it, but don't be afraid of that spinning rod. I caught a lot of fish in college on a spinning rod, not by choice, but just had to learn. I had to.
Yeah, I think that a rod, not so much the reel, but a rod is a huge game changer when it comes to any finesse technique. But if you're talking about drop shot, my drop shot go-to rod is going to be probably like a 7.3 medium to medium heavy. I fish Shimano's, so it's going to be a Zodius or even a new Loomis NRX. But I think having that extra length of the 7, not most people fish it on like 6.8 to 7.1 medium rod, which is okay. But I think that having that extra couple inches of length there on that rod gives my baits more action, especially like you're talking about having light weights and giving that bait a little more action. And another thing that you probably don't want to overlook is you're talking about the baits, and now we have the Berkeley flatworm, which is like, it's like crack to bass fishermen. Or like if you can buy, like my local shop here is one of the only ones in America that I think that can get them regularly. They get like 2,000 packs on the wall, and then next thing you know, they'll post on Facebook and they are gone, like every one of them. And they do catch fish, but I caught a lot of fish throwing a 4-inch swim bait on a nose hooked on a drop shot.
Even like the Jackal crosstail shad is very similar, or the Dream Shot. Those things are all kind of similar profiles. But I will also say with the spinning rod length, I use a 7.1. It's an ALX Zolo Maestro. It's pretty soft tip, but it's 7.1 because I wouldn't say I'm making the longest casts, and I'm not dropping straight down most of the time. They're not too far out from the boat for me. But if you do want to get better at a drop shot and you do have multiple length spinning rods, remember a 6'8" to a 6'12" or a 6'11" or a 7 foot. You're going to want to drop down on the trolling motor with those if you see a fish below the boat, because it's shorter. It's going to be more real. It's going to be more accurate. You may have to take a step back and drop down so that it goes straight below your transducer. And then for a casting situation, you might want that 7.3 because you're going to need to get more of a backbone into them. But yeah, dropping down, shorter rod most of the time. So so where your bait's at below the boat, and then a longer rod when you're actually having to fling that thing out there.
It says, "Oh, we catch them on the Ohio River." Well, I mean, we've caught a few on the Ohio River. Nate and I won a little Tuesday night tournament or Wednesday night tournament here on the river, and so that's the thing. Like, I feel like that here on the Ohio River, we talked about it being a crappy fishing hole, which I'm not degrading that at all. I think that is true. It's a matter of fact, I was fishing the BFLs through that's called the Buckeye Division, and they fish primarily the Ohio River, and I absolutely hate it, man. I'm like, good Lord. So that's why I travel and fish the Great Lakes, fish the St. Clair Division, because if I'm going to spend the money, to go, like, there, some of them are in, close to Indiana and stuff. So I have to get a hotel room and stuff anyway. So if I'm going to do that, I'm going to go to a place where I have chance to catch a 7-pound smallmouth as opposed to 7-pound winning the whole tournament.
It's good to mix it in for sure. But hey, you mentioned if you can catch them there, you can catch them on the elites probably. But you will be able to see with Alex Redwine, a new Ohioan who qualified this year, one of the youngest in the Elite Series history to qualify, and he's not far from the Cincinnati region. So we'll now have Bill Lowen and Alex Redwine. But I think it's a testament to getting when people. I'll just go off on this little thing right now. Maybe it'll segue into a good conversation, but we always talk about growing the sport. We want to grow the sport. And I think people say that because they want kids to get into the sport, but they also say that because they want more money coming into the sport. They want more opportunities for sponsorships at bigger levels for prize money. They want all of that. So the more people we get in there, the more attention we get in, the more money that could come in, and it could benefit everybody or the top level pros. But I will say, and I always fight back against this, we have grown the sport. We have grown it. There is the Bassmaster Opens filled up and have basically 2 sets of fields. We've got a whole entire field on the waiting list. We've got a whole field in the tournament. The College Series filled up 300 boats per tournament in 20 minutes for 4 events. 300 boats, 20 minutes, 4 events, sold out, booked up. People want to fish, and they are fishing. I looked at the Northern Division in the Opens this year. I think 8 of the top 14 anglers are under the age of 25 in the point standings. So we've grown the sport, and we've taught the sport very well. And now these young kids are definitely catching. Young for me, I'm 28, and I'm like, these young kids, man, they're qualifying quicker and quicker. And so we're going to now we have grown the sport. That balloon is full. We've got to now take care of that balloon so we don't pop it. We got to figure out how to manage it, what we've created, because we have done a great job as avid bass fishermen on getting attention, making it fun, and creating that momentum. Now we got to manage the momentum, and we got to know what's the next step on before we decide to grow some more. We got to manage our growth now. What's the next step to then be able to balloon a little more?
Yeah, I agree with that. And, to kind of segue what you're talking about there is that I thought we were going to take a major hit to bass fishing, especially on the Bassmaster side of things, when you had all these major pros that were the face of Bassmaster for years and years and years jumping ship to go to the MLF. And, like, I'm glad to see some of those people coming back that have the opportunity, but I'm also worried about those people that don't have the opportunity to come back, right? Because if you're in the Elite Series, you have to, win Angler of the Year or have a classic win to be, have that legend status.
Or you got to beat 250 pros in the Opens 9 times in a row to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not unheard of, but, like, like I said, everybody has to do what's best for their self and their family. I feel like that people like KVD, who, most of his paycheck, I think, comes from, Johnny Morris, which, it's kind of like, don't bite the hand that feeds you. And it's still a pretty good deal too. You get into fish, and, I think the no tournament fee entry and stuff was huge for a lot of those people. But seeing people like G-Man and, Polinick and these guys that are transitioning back over, I'm super glad to see that stuff. So I think that's going to be, hopefully we see more of that as we go on.
I will be brutally honest and say that the fall of 2018 wrecked me as a fishing fan and as a worker. At the time I was doing my job, editing video on Bassmaster Live, commentating as well. And then I was managing the social media. So I got to see all the comments that Bassmaster wasn't worth a darn, that we weren't going anywhere, that we were just a bunch of people who were money hungry based on what anglers had said in their see you later speeches, whatever they posted on any social media platform, that were very strategic and well written, almost like it was a plan. I don't know. I'm not going to get into that necessarily, but I'll be honest about that other times too, because facts are facts. But when you do look back at it, people were worried, but I knew who was waiting. I knew who was in the Opens. I knew who was in the College Series. They were ready. These guys were ready. And so all of the, not the hate, because they didn't hate these guys. They just weren't the guys they knew. The skill diss, they dissed the skill of these anglers. I knew that they were going to come and perform. We just needed to teach them how to be on camera. We needed to give them the opportunity to prove themselves. And man, these guys have done such a great job. Even the ones cut this year, it's tough to cut 20 pros. It's tough to do that. This is our first cut that we've had to make since 2017 because of COVID, because of the exodus, because of all of the different things. We had to build back the field. This is the first time we've had to cut people. Those 20 people were cut, and it wasn't in vain. Those guys are a reason that Bassmaster is just as strong as they've ever been, because they jumped on board when no one else cared about Bassmaster in 2018 to 2019. When people were hating and not sure of the future, they bought in and said, we can do this. We can do this. And everybody had their moment to shine. And now it's a competition-based thing, a performance-based sport. But I was kind of wrecked because I didn't know as a young kid with responsibilities what my role in this sport was. How am I responsible for them leaving? Did I not do enough media for them, for the exposure, for the entry fees? I can't control those different things at times. And so that hurt me to see some of my heroes say the things they said or do the things they did. But it all comes back. And I know that my feelings were genuine and true, because from when I was just a little kid going to a classic in person, it was all about somebody caught fish. They put them on the scales, and two grown men or two grown women or whoever is competing, the competition, standing beside each other at the scales. And we're going to put these fish here, and they're going to tell us who wins. That will stand the test of time. And that is the coolest thing in our sport, is that moment that someone is unsure if they want it or not, and they put the fish on the scales, and we get to all see at the same time when it happens. So that moment will never go away. And people like Brandon Polinick and G-Man have said that they missed the fans. And those moments, the satisfaction of and strategy of, I got to leave the dock at a certain time and I got to get back at a certain time, and I can use all 8 hours and fish near the ramp, or I can use a certain amount of time. There's no, lines out, we're done right at this time, just come on back at your leisure. It is strategic, and you got to race against the clock to get back, and you have consequences to your actions if you're late. And like you said, there's guys who don't have a pathway back with a Legends exemption. There are guys with Legends exemptions because they've won AOYs and Classics that may not have a path back because of the way they left. It's not like a guaranteed that if Ronnie Moore had a Classic win, if I stepped on your foot going out the door and I did it on purpose, you may not invite me back in your house. And so it's not a given, but I always like that video that pops up on Instagram that says, oh, look at me having to deal with the consequences to my actions. And that is, for the ones who stayed with the Bassmaster Elite Series, there were possible consequences there. For the ones that left, there's possible consequences. And there are people who have chose and have thrived. And so it's very interesting, though. But I will always remember those messages, the mean DMs that we got, and the messages I got about no one's going to fish the Opens. No one's going to want to be on the Elites anymore. And now we've got 400 people signed up for the Southern Opens. And it's now they're like, can you make a spot for me? And I'm like, weren't you the one who texted me saying that no one wanted to fish?
Yeah.
I'm not going to make a spot for you.
Yeah, I get that. And it's kind of, I think that's not just in, yeah, no, I get that. So I think it's not like, I don't think, that goes with anything in life, right? So if you leave a job to take a better job, I'm not saying that they have a better job. I'm just saying, I'm just using this. Like, if I was a teacher and I could get a job as a chemical engineer somewhere making double what I can, you never want to step on the toes of your other position, because if you've done a job there good enough, then something, God forbid, happens somewhere else, because I will never, ever hold it against anybody trying to better themselves for their family, right?
Exactly.
If they feel like it's a better opportunity for them, sure, go be it. Have fun, do what you got to do, but don't throw me under the bus in the grand scheme of it. And I'm with you. I feel like a lot of those pros did, and some, though, I feel like on the opposite end of the spectrum, I feel like some of them done really good about saying, look, guys, this is my home.
I'm going to try it out. Yeah.
Yeah. This is always going to be my home. I might be giving out the best thing that's ever happened to me, but most everybody said it, like, I have to do what's best for me and my family. And, I didn't hold it against any of those guys. I think that a lot of us do the same thing. And you mentioned there a second ago about having the opportunity, as far as, like, I get the CPR thing, catch, photo, release, you're weighing them. It is doing more for the sport of bass fishing, as far as like, preservation of the species or whatever. But you guys,
it actually does make a difference. I will say that, because we pride ourselves on making sure we take care of the resource in the, and I hope that tournaments do that. But yes, in theory, lesser mortality possibly.
Yeah, but I mean, you guys said, we're talking about pros here that have the best equipment on the planet. They're not talking about, this dude named Tyler fishing out of a 20-year-old boat that half of his live wells don't work. These guys have the best of the best equipment, and that goes to show like Greenville or even Alabama, they were fishing down at Gunnersville, and it was like a 55-minute trailer one way to the arena, and these fish are staying alive the whole point there. But you're talking about getting back on time and strategically planning this stuff. It takes me back to Andy Morgan in the classic there. I think it was down in Knoxville there, where his graphs were an hour off and he come in an hour late.
Oh yeah, I think it was Andy Montgomery. Andy
Oh
Montgomery.
yeah, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
yeah, McGovern.
yeah. No, it's tough, and we had it this year. One of my best friends, Jake Whitaker, checked in with the wrong flight. He was like 17 minutes late. His weight was disqualified. He would have made the cut in the top 45, and he finished 91st, and he missed the classic by 55 points, or something like that. And it's like, I just made one mistake that you never make. So I think it's very important because I've raced against the clock. I've came in with 20 seconds left. Like, I always make sure I check in at 3:15, but that means I have all of 3:15, right? As soon as it clicks 3:16, I'm late. I got all of 3:15. And I remember pulling in, the clock says 3:15:45. And I was like, woo, good thing we didn't make one more cast, because that was going to be the cast that we would have gotten late on. I had my buddy's rain jacket flew out of the boat when we were hitting waves at Pickwick one time in a college event. He's like, my jacket. And I said, we cannot turn around, bro. And we got in with a minute left. And I'm like, we would have came off pad, came and got it. If we miss it on the scoop, then we got to go back around. And now we're late because I got a 55-mile-an-hour boat, an 18-foot Ranger, So that's what I had back in college with my dad.
Guys, we're about an hour and 15 minutes in the show. If you guys want to ask Ronnie anything, go ahead and drop the comments below. We're going to wrap it up here. I don't want to keep him all night. He's got, stuff going on. He's a busy guy. So
I'm glad you take consideration, because I would have just kept going until we're.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can sit here and talk with you forever. And I feel like that, I've known you for years and we just met, which is cool. But I think the greatest thing about the bass fishing community as a whole is that there's a lot of people like you and I that just want to talk fishing, no matter if you're catching them or not. And growing the sport, I'm with you as far as I feel like that you guys, mainstream media, as far as like Bassmaster and even FLW and the Opens and the BFLs and the smaller tournaments have exponentially grown this sport. You get 20 years ago, you think, look at a G Loomis InterX Plus rod right now, it's $625. If 20 years ago you would have said, hey man, try out this rod, and like, okay, this is a great rod. If you'd have told them it's $625, they would have thrown the boat. They would have like handcuffed it to themselves and never done anything like that. But now I feel like that there's more people in the sport seeing the benefits of these higher end things and fishing different techniques and learning. And that's, the thing that I'll say to end it is, I think that if I ever stop learning as a human being, but more aptly as a fisherman, that will be the day that I quit fishing, because I'll never be a professional, or even I'll never be an expert, because I feel like that I spend so much time on the water trying to pursue to being a professional. Whether that's, do I think I'll ever make a Bassmaster Classic? No. Do I think I have a shot? Sure, everybody's got a shot. But do I feel like that I spend enough time in the water and I do a lot of commentary and a YouTube video and stuff that eventually that I can consider myself a professional at what I do? But as soon as I consider myself an expert or a master at fishing, I think I'm fooling myself.
Yeah, no, that's the coolest thing is every single day provides you the opportunity to know more than you've ever known before, because you're going to learn something that day and it's just going to grow your knowledge of it. And also, it's the most humbling thing. You could be number one today, 20 pounds, and you could zero tomorrow. You could literally change your whole day around, and it goes the opposite. You could struggle, and then you're like, I have a shot. I can still figure this out. I can make this work. And I always remember, I think it was Grant Goldbeck at the Harris Chain one year. He got second place in the elite event. He zeroed on day one, and then caught like 25, 27, 32, and just lost to Shaw Grigsby. But he had zero in an elite event. I mean, I know when I went to my first Classic in person, I no longer felt bad about zeroing, because I saw anglers at Lay Lake when it was frigid cold zero in the Classic. these guys can zero. Who am I to think that I can't zero? Of course I can zero. So never stop learning. Rick Lund doesn't know everything, and they're like, when is he going to call it quits? And I said, we're going to ship him off day 3 of a takeoff in a coffin on the front deck of a boat. That's when Rick Lund, he's going to fish till he no longer can physically fish, which for him, I don't know when that's going to be. I might be gone before that. And so that bodes well for the sport, that you can fish long into your career. You're not 4 years and done because of you got beat up and too many concussions. And so our sport's in a good spot. I love all the anglers. They all, like you said, I never want to tell someone how they need to feed their family, because I hope no one ever tries to tell me how I need to feed my family. But at the end of the day, competition brings out the best in us. And so someone's going to rise up and catch them if you're not catching them there. And we wouldn't have gotten introduced to Drew Cook and Patrick Walters that first year. So there are blessings that came out of it. We went down the opens list a little bit farther, and we found the Lee Livasees of the world that were one of the last people picked, on the opens. And the Patrick Walters and the Drew Cooks. Walters was 7th and 9th in both divisions, but he wouldn't have qualified because we were taking the top 5 in each division, I believe. And so we wouldn't have even had either one of those guys. And now they're 2 staples in the sport. So everybody leaving created job opportunities, and we really got to open our horizons to know that, hey, if you think you can catch them, this just proved it to you that you have a shot to do it, because that guy, we didn't know his name, and now he's winning elite events. He's changing the sport with forward-facing sonar, and we didn't know his name. But I will say there's a hungry group coming. We just have enough food to feed them for sure.
That's right. I got an influx of questions here, so let's say Brandon is looking forward to being a dad. Ronnie.
Well, what's up, Brandon? Brandon used to work at our church that we go to here in Little Rock, and I got to speak at a function in Texas at his church about fishing and faith. But man, our baby's due date is right between the Santee Cooper and Chickamauga Elite. There's a week in between, and that's the due date. And if I have to miss one of the events, I have to miss one of the events. But I think that's like the coolest thing in my life, that I get to possibly be a dad in March and be able to hold a baby. We went to, I told you this, we had to drop off some food for other couples who have had children. And we dropped off food tonight, and I got to hold some of the babies when we were there. Dude, I mean, if I had to pick between being a dad and never fishing again, I'm being a dad all day long. It's the coolest thing ever. And to be able to share that and to see really what the Lord has done in our life through pregnancy and hopeful births and whatnot. We had a tough 2020 when we had 2 separate miscarriages. Me and my wife did, and she's a trooper for physically having to go through that. But to now see God's faithfulness 1 year almost to the date of when we got pregnant the first time last year, we got pregnant this year, and to see that transpire, and we're at 25, almost 26 weeks now. We have a baby appointment on Thursday. If it's a girl, I'm screwed, dude. I am screwed because all wrapped around her finger. She's gonna be wrapped around mine. If it's a boy, he'll be Ronnie the Fourth. I'll carry on my grandfather's legacy and my father's legacy, and it's the coolest thing. So I think that I wake up every day now. I wanted to be the best commentator in the world as recently as earlier this year, and that's still cool if I ever achieve that. But I wake up now hoping to be a better man and a better husband and a better soon-to-be father, because I now know I'll have little eyes watching. And I need to teach them how to love well and to be a great person that loves Christ. So I'm so hopeful for that. That's going to throw a whole wrench into the March, April time period is the heaviest time in the sport of fishing, no matter where you are. And right in the middle, there's going to be a reason that it's there. So that's
awesome, man. Congratulations to you and your wife. I hope everything works out. And I'm sure it will. God's plan always works out. Nate Witt says, with the number of people entering the opens, do life members still get first dibs, or how does that work?
So that's one way. And I think I told too many people, they're like, how can I ensure that I get in the opens this year? And I said, well, one way to cut your odds in half or double your odds is to be a life member, because the way that the priority registration comes for the opens was elite series guys get a shot at it, and people be like, why? They're pros already. Well, every year we have cuts. Going forward, every year we will have cuts, and some guys they're on the elites, but they want to up their odds on making sure they stay qualified. Chad Pipkins did it like 3 years in a row. He qualified He was about to get kicked out from the elites and requalified 1 week later at the final Northern Open, and it was all good. And so it's a way for people to make the classic and a way for people to qualify for the elites and stay qualified. So the elites get first shot at that. And then we have the top 25 in the points. I don't know if that has ranged, if it's top 10 sometimes, top 25, but a top number of guys in the points from 2021 get priority to sign up for 2022. And then we go through the Life Nation and the Bass Nation members. And there were Life members who didn't get in this year. So it wasn't just a bunch of Life members that didn't get in or a bunch of people who've never fished a tournament in their life, but they've gotten a million magazines and they're just trying it. These are avid tournament anglers who said, I need to be a Life member to up my odds. And man, I think it was like 7:30 it opened up, and 7:37, like it was full. Like it did it quick. And the Centrals did it too. And it's crazy. There were people who signed up for one division and didn't get in and called Bass and said, I will fish all 9 if you can get me in. Like they went from I only want to fish 3 to I want to fish all of them if that's what it takes to get me in. So every year we're tweaking it. We try to take feedback from the elites first and foremost because they are our most avid customers and clients. And that's the way we got to treat them. They're our brand, our partners, but they're also customers and clients at that point. So we just got done with the Birmingham meeting last week. We got to talk to about a third to maybe half of the field. They got to feedback on different things, payouts and entries and all the different fun conversations that we never have definitive answers on. But all those processes kind of go through. There are things that will happen in 2023 for the Opens that we are discussing right now, but we can't put it into action because people have already paid for this structure and outline. So there are things that we're working on now that we'll see come to fruition in 23. So it's a lot, but hey, the supply is the supply and demand. It's a good thing to see the Opens full. It definitely is.
Yeah, I give it. We've got a couple questions from Cameron here. We'll just combine these because they're about the same subject. First one, he says, how do you think Ike's going to do next season? And then to compound that, lastly, what lakes does he think he'll have the best opportunity on?
Ike and Nelly. One thing that's really cool is we've seen some guys. We've seen Gerald Swindle, Brandon Polinick, just to name Elite Series guys who've came back, or former elites that have now came back, whether qualification or legends. Polinick, Swindle, Hackney, Christie, and Porosnik and Ike this year. So we've had about, I think, 6 that were touring pros on the elites that have came back. And we've only seen Polinick and Christie win. So it's not like they just came in and it was a cakewalk against these new guys that no one knew a few years ago. It's tough. So I don't know where Ike's next win will come from. Not that that was a question, but I think that he'll do well. I think that his decision to only fish the Opens in the Toyota Series this year kind of reignited his competition spark, that fire. And so I think that Ike still has plenty to show. He still has the ability. He's a beaming light for the sport. He's one reason that I got into the sport. I loved his personality. And I realized that as a talker, naturally, I'm allowed to be on the water. You don't have to be quiet when you fish. You can be yourself. And he showed that. I think he'll do very well. I think that I'll go out on a limb. I think that Ike's best finish this year could possibly be Lake Oahe in South Dakota.
Cool. Tristan Cobb, great show. Enjoyed. Yeah, I get it. Tristan, I need to come down there and fish down in your area. So I'm going to make it happen. So just keep on keeping on. I'll be down there. Nate Witt said, thanks for the answer about the Opens. My girlfriend, Misty Salyers, who's watching upstairs, says, it's been a great show. My favorite so far, which if you're getting that approval, that's good stuff. Good thumbs up.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm not the best. I'm not the most well-polished, but I've learned from the best. And I try to just be myself. And that's one thing that I was saying was watching Tommy Sanders and Mark Zona for years and then being on Bassmaster Live with them. I tried to emulate Mark Zona and Tommy Sanders, and I can't. And so I had a heart-to-heart with my wife, and she's sitting over here with her hair in a towel. I sat down. I was like, I just am not. It doesn't feel as natural. And she was like, well, you just have to be who you are. And so my passion is what I lean into. Passion, statistics, and enjoyment for the sport. I mean, I'm just a kid in a candy shop that I get paid to wake up and talk about bass fishing, and that people tune in and watch, and that Fox has invested so much time to give Bassmaster some love. That is very encouraging going forward. So I'm excited, and thank you, Misty. I appreciate it, but I'm just passionate. So I will say that if you don't like what your career is, but you have something you're passionate about, Tyler, you love to bass fish, but you obviously love the media aspect of it. And people may be like, well, you're not getting a bunch of views on your show this week or next week or your first episode. I was a kid shooting GoPro videos at college events that no one was watching. And one day I got a call to work Bass Track, and now I'm on Bassmaster Live. So no idea. I don't have a blueprint, but if you love something and it's worth your time and attention, you better go all in on it when you get the chance.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like I said, guys, I appreciate you guys joining this episode of On Another Line Live. Again, we are joined by the one and only Ronnie Moore here from Bassmaster. You can find him pretty much giving you the lowdown facts as well as some of the cool technology side of things on Bassmaster. This guy, again, does a lot of stuff that you don't see behind the scenes from my research. A lot of the clips and stuff that are sent to the live feed and stuff, you're editing those things too, right? Sometimes.
Yeah, we're keeping it busy. I've got a little bit of help for sure. Some people who come in remotely and are like, hey, can I clip off any highlights today? I'm like, yes. And I'll still text them and be like, make sure you get that catch because I liked it enough that I know social media will. But yeah, we kind of balance a lot of different hats on our head that you can't see, but clipping off stuff. I run our YouTube channel exclusively and I upload basically, I'm not going to say all, but 90% of the video you see on Bassmaster social media or the website, I've probably touched in some way. And our social media editor, Emily Hand, is able to grab it and post it up. But during the live show, it's definitely very interesting. I got people texting me about stats and figures for full screen graphics, getting Marshall phone numbers so we can Skype a guy who is top of the leaderboard that we don't have on camera. And then obviously the clips that we want to see online we do, and all the archives and different things. But man, I'm probably the guy who watches the most bass fishing in the world because not only do I watch the live show as I'm commentating it, but I see every highlight clip. And then the next week I go through the entire archive once again, cut the commercials out and post them up for people to watch. So that's why I know that that stump in that creek held a fish in the 87 Classic that Fat Cat Newton caught 3 times in a row to win back-to-back. I know all that stuff.
That's right. Yeah, for sure. Well, guys, again, Ron, if you hold on for just a second, I'll talk to you for just a second. But, guys, I appreciate you guys joining this episode of On Another Line Live. And just as every week, we'll see you live next Tuesday at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. And if you can, get out there and lean on them. We'll see you next time on Another Line.